We are at the Arizona Flywheelers Show, the 35th annual show on March 16th, 2019, excuse me. Here we have a Bears wheel. George Washington Ferris designed his colossal pleasure wheel for the 1893 World Columbus Exposition in Chicago. It stood 264 feet high and held 2,160 riders. One trip around took 20 minutes. The hub alone weighed more than 70 tons, the largest single piece of steel forged up to that time. It ended up at the St. Louis World's Fair in 1904. There it could barely pay its own expenses and was finally filled with a couple of barrels of dynamite. Lee Sullivan of Jacksonville, Illinois, now builds most of today's Ferris wheels. And it's a 1945 Fairbanks Morse Type Z, self-C, self-oiling 3-horsepower engine, serial number 871457. The Bears Ferris wheel attachment, and it's owned by Bonnie and Tom Fancy of Parks, Arizona. This is a Fuller Johnson farm pump engine from 1910. It's a 1-horsepower with serial number 23185. It's a pump jack attachment owned by Bonnie and Tom Fancy of Parks, Arizona. Here we have various small engines. These powered businesses, homes, contributed to manufacturing and the early years of America. Here's a John Deere E, serial number 366718. It's a 1946 1.5 horsepower engine. The owner is Walter Rawls and Rachel Heineman. Walter also goes by Higgy, and they're from Buckeye. And this was the last made. The last year they made this was 1946. This is a Continental Eagle 10-saw cotton gin from 1910, and it's owned by Bill Lanier Jr. of Buckeye. It's a replica gin stand built by Arizona Gin Supply in Buckeye. And here we have a warning sign. It says, warning, employees working around engines, moving or revolving machinery, shafting, etc. are warned of the danger and are prohibited from wearing torn clothing, loose or unbuttoned jackets, blouses, shirts, long neckties, and loose sleeves. Always wear the overall jackets tucked into the trousers or under the overall bib. Never forget to examine your clothing before commencing work. Here we have a College Company model from Batavia, Illinois, Type H, 1919, 1.5 horsepower, and the owner is Bill Lanier Jr. of Buckeye. And this battery and buzz coil ignition, it has the original paint and decal that are visible. Here's a water boy engine. I bet it would have stories to tell. So, what are your names?
John Meekins and Tom Drenner.
Thank you, John Meekins and Tom Drenner. And these are your engines here. All right. Thank you for being at the show.
Thank you.
And I think that's Ty. Ty Weckerly.
I don't know about Paul and Bonnie are very happy about that. You have to start to flip here, Rudy. They keep saying, there's that engine going.
This is a 1920 Associated 1 3/4 horsepower chore boy. And this one is a 1915 International 1 horsepower Mughal from Tom Trainer of Phoenix. Brought that up. Here we have a 1915 Whitty Engine Works 2 horsepower headless, 4-inch bore, 5-inch stroke, 63 CI displacement, 2 horsepower at 550 RPMs. The headless Whitty was produced in many sizes up to 300 horsepower from 1911 to 1922 in Kansas City, Missouri. Bill Trainer from Prescott, Arizona brought this machine for us to see and learn from. This is the Galloway. Here's an engine that's for sale. All kinds of engines that powered the United States. This one says a Seeger Engine Works, or it could be Sager, from Lansing, Michigan. It's an old 3 horsepower from 1907 and owned by Jim and Linda Smith. Here's a Fairbanks Morse, and they were stationary engines and a source of power on the farm and around the home in the early 20th century. They were used to power everything from washing machines to corn shellers in the days before rural America had electricity. Today they are collected and restored for running condition and appearance in farm shows around the country. These engines are prized as much for their distinctive chugging, wheezing, and popping as they are for the bygone era they represent. This 1918 Fairbanks Morse is a 6 horsepower Z, 5.75-inch bore, 8-inch stroke, 2008 CI displacement, 6 horsepower at 450 RPMs. This is a rare tank-cooled version of the 6 horsepower Z. It was built for 1 year only in 1918. This engine was sold new by the Star Machinery Company in Seattle, Washington, and it's owned by Bill Trainer of Prescott, Arizona. We're shelling some corn here with this machine. Here, Ty Wackerly has a John Deere W113. Its use was stationary pump engine in 1947. Motor displacement is 501 CIs and the horsepower is 40. Thank you to all who brought small engines to the 35th Annual Arizona Flywheelers Show. Here we have Dennis Weckerly, and it looks like he's visiting with Chuck Ottelsman. He is. And there's a 1934 ISHP Fairbanks Morse owned by Leo and Gloria Riesenkoop of Parks, Arizona. Hi.
How are you?
Good.